To the Prairie Mobile text line, there's a couple of messages here that I wanted to read. This is from Brian in Regina. Obviously, he was going back and watching old episodes. He says, great show last Friday with John Frenzy. Another quote for the archives. Hour 1, 32-minute mark. It's the greatest thing since sliced underwear. Keep up with great guests and football talk. Brian in Regina. That's an old Lynchism, which is fine. John Lynch has a whole new legion of fans that have found him on social media and Facebook Live. He loves it, of course. His jokes are new again.
He's been saying all the same things for years, but
He's been saying it for years. It's a new audience. That's what I was searching for. Brady in Saskatoon writes in, Prairie Mobile text line, 840-8777. He says, Larry Fitzgerald has bought a minority stake in the Phoenix Suns organization. Well, we always joke about the RP bump. You come on this show and you end up getting a pro contract or good things happen to you. Larry Fitzgerald right here. RP bump signs a 1-year deal with the Cardinals. 1 more year in the sun. And now literally has bought into the Phoenix Suns. Who are the other? We were sitting around here the other day kicking around who got the RP bump, which was termed, by the way, by Austin Davis of Post Media. Mike Benavides comes on this show. Weeks later, he's the Ottawa Red Blacks defensive coordinator. It's magic. It's a sprinkle of Jesus. Note from producer Clark, if we get 75 likes on our episode today, we'll be giving away 2 RP Show mugs. These are very coveted coffee mugs. If we get 75 likes on our episode today, we'll be giving away 2 RP Show mugs. So go down to the bottom of the screen, hit like, and I really would appreciate it if you hit share as well. Joe Lazito's watching on Long Island today. He writes in all caps, Lynch! I'm telling you, one of Lynch's new fans. So what we've covered here today, Nick Arbuckle wants to be paid in the range of Cody Fajardo. I thought it was very interesting that Derek Moncrief would weigh in and say, I'd put him at $350, not $450. We'll find out what the Ottawa Red Blacks think. I understand when people say, what's he done to earn Cody Fajardo money? But not a lot less than Cody Fajardo. Again, back to that buying the house thing. He's like a house. He's worth what people are willing to pay.
Mm-hmm. And he looked good. Arbuckle looked good in his X amount of starts with Calgary, and he comes from a good system. He comes from learning under Bo Levi Mitchell for the last couple of years. So it's all about leverage, and he has it, like I said earlier, with Ottawa. So he can basically, whatever he wants, he'll probably get. Realistically. He's not going to go get 500 from Ottawa.
Well, going back to point 1 of our Magnificent 7 show topics today, Matt Nichols is upset that the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have targeted Zach Collaros in free agency and not him. He's put in 4 years there. He feels, I think the quote from his agent, Cameron Foster, was, after all I've done for the Blue Bombers, you're going to go to the dance with another guy. So he's going to be out there. Potentially not even with Winnipeg.
Well, that doesn't help Arbuckle is Nichols, and because now Nichols has leverage to go elsewhere if Winnipeg ends up signing Collaros long term. Maybe Nichols goes to Ottawa and Arbuckle's on the outside looking in, going, where do I land? So he needs to find that happy medium, right?
Blake is watching in Kindersley. Sasky says, you got to look at games played. Cody played the season. Arbuckle played 4 or 5 games. Hey, I get it. I'm with you. I totally understand that. But in the body of work for Nick Arbuckle, he was pretty sensational. Ask the Riders firsthand when he came in here in July and just smacked them around 37-10. It wasn't even a game. And this is where you got to rely on the football people, because there's a lot of football observers that say Nick Arbuckle is just a product of the system in Calgary, the same system that made Bo Levi Mitchell a star. I don't go along with that. No, systems don't make players. Players win. And Nick Arbuckle is that good. You can't fake his mobility. You can't fake his arm strength. You can't fake the way he sees the field. But that's what you got to put faith in Marcel Desjardins for. And you don't think Paul LaPolice knows?
Yeah.
Whether this guy can play or not, or is worth it, or how much he's worth?
I think Fajardo, and being in the fishbowl that is Saskatchewan, he revived a fan base. That doesn't matter to a GM it's all about,
not at all.
It's all about film, arm strength, mobility, how this guy looks when he, right? Like, I think if you took everything else away and isolated strength on strength, Fajardo versus Arbuckle, they're similar. I think Fajardo has a higher of a ceiling, given his...
You think who has a higher ceiling?
Fajardo.
I think Arbuckle does.
He seems like more of a competitor in terms of getting that extra yard and fighting for a bit more.
We just seen more of him. We don't know enough about Arbuckle to say that.
Exactly. Yeah. That's me watching Fajardo closely on a daily basis and not seeing Arbuckle, only seeing him on game day for 6 weeks or whatever it was.
Arbuckle is on the God Squad too, I think. Like I said, we haven't seen enough of Nick Fatty Arbuckle yet. Who, by the way, DM'd the account the other day. Clark was showing me the show account on Twitter, at Rod Peterson Show, thanking us for our coverage of the CFL. Nick Arbuckle. So we're big Arbuckle fans, right, Clark?
Get to work, Clark.
He said he'd be coming on the show too, by the way.
There you go.
Can we put the comment up from Manchester, England? I understand this is the Norwegian flag, but I'm just pointing out that we are an international show for people like Gary Lawless that didn't realize it. From Pete Joe Baruch. Hey, Pete, are you related to former Moose Jaw Warrior Davy Baruch? He says, hello, Rod Peterson Show from Manchester, England. We need more rider signings. All the way in Manchester, England. They're on the Riders' butt for signing their free agents.
We kind of see this every year. We kind of get a few signings right around Christmas time, December, when a few people want their contracts locked up. What are we doing next year? Where are we going next year?
Yep.
And then we kind of have this period in January, early February, right before free agency, where we don't get any because they've decided what they're doing, right? So they basically know, okay, we've either offered you a contract and you're not taking it, or we're just not offering you a contract. So usually we have a lull, and then right before free agency, sometimes we get a few signings. But with this new window where these players can shop around their offers, there's going to be a few more offers right before, and a few will be accepted right before February 11th. And then all of a sudden, there's going to be an influx of signings on February 11th because teams can now shop those offers and know what their value is, their market value is on February 11th. So there's always a lull, right?
People's typing fingers are on fire. Look at the Facebook walls going off like a slot machine at the casino right now. All these comments, I'll try to get to all of them. CFL fans just starving for February 12th for free agency to open. It's still a few weeks away, but everybody's talking about it. But guess what? It won't get here any faster the more you wish it. But Metal Shingle Guy writes in on the Prairie Mobile text line. He says, if Fatty Arbuckle was going to sign, he would already. Toronto and Dinwiddie will get him. Nichols will be with Lapo. Pause that thought for a second. I want your take on that. Jason Wall writes in. He says, how often do we have almost too many quarterbacks to go around? Great scouting league-wide the past few years. Absolutely. Wasn't that long ago. There was a scarcity of quality starting quarterbacks in the CFL, and now there are too many. Bravo to the scouts. Bravo to the players themselves. But injuries caused it, right? Everybody said that, the winner of the poll that we had, what was the biggest story in the CFL in 2019? People said it was the quarterback injuries. Well, we wouldn't have seen Cody Fajardo. We wouldn't have seen Nick Arbuckle. We wouldn't have seen a lot of these guys if not for those injuries. And then to the players for seizing the opportunity, not going like a lot of the quarterbacks that we've seen around here over the years that get their opportunity on stage and soil themselves. And their career's over within weeks. Ty Steffen with a really good comment. It seems simple, but it's a good question. Do you think the Riders should go all in to win the Grey Cup at home, just like in 2013? That's the point I was trying to get to earlier with Derek Moncrief going to the NFL. One of the stars of the Saskatchewan defense, and in fact of the whole team. Are you going to pay the dough to get another all-star in there? Or are you going to groom a young guy? I don't think which in years past, if it wasn't the Grey Cup year, I would actually advocate for finding the next Derek Moncrief. Right. You can't afford to do that this year. You got to pay the money.
To get who, though? I don't think there's a person out there that's going to come in and fill Moncrief's spot. I'll have to look at the free agent list, but I think they're going to find somebody that's been within the system for the last few years. I'm trying to think of a name like Purefoy could come down and play that spot and change up his dynamic a bit, and then you'd have to find a new DB. But there's going to be a guy who they'll find at a free agent camp, just an athlete, and you can teach him the system pretty fast. If he can be fast.
It took Moncrief at least a half a season to get caught up to speed. Maybe a full year. That's the point. Do you have the luxury of time to do that?
There's a few guys in the system who were PR guys in the last season that potentially could be that. That'll be a training camp spot, I think. I don't think they'll sign a free agent that can fill that spot.
Sandra Larson writes in, she says, never mind signings. The Riders are one of the only teams left who haven't announced the coaching staff. That is so last hour. We talked about that. The coaching staff's going to be fine.
They have the coordinators. They have the head coach. They have the GM. They're fine.
Interesting point, by the way, if this is to be believed, Scott Milanovich's coaching staff in Edmonton has 9 guys. The reason, the notion is so that Milanovich can pay himself more. And if that's the case, fine. The point here is, what if the Eskimos had rushed to name their next head coach like all of their fans wanted them to? They wouldn't have got Scott Milanovich, right? They waited, and they got the guy that they wanted. So the fact that Riders haven't named their staff yet, really, it doesn't matter to me, but there's a lot of people like Sandra out there that are very worried that the Riders haven't named their coaching staff yet. All that does is tell me, that's a tell at how antsy this fan base is about the 2020 season. We had a poll the other day. Mm-hmm. It was Friday. Is there more pressure on the Riders this year than 2013? The same amount or less? Do you know what won the vote in the end 24 hours later? There's more pressure on them now than 2013, which frankly to me is silly.
No.
If anything, it would be the same. No, I actually think there's less.
There's much less. Because think about what happened in 2009, what happened in 2010, and then it was building up from 2009, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it had to be their year after.
The great story.
After Darian, right? And so I think with Fajardo, him losing in the Western Final last year, I don't think there's much pressure.
There's that. Right? And there's also the fact, if you were watching Friday's show, and I know you watch every day, there was no gray area. If the Riders hadn't won the Grey Cup in 2013, Brendan Taman and Corey Chamberlain were going to be fired. Yeah. End of story. What's more pressure than that? If the Riders don't win the Grey Cup this year, Jeremy O'Day and Craig Dickinson aren't going to be fired. They're not. They're in year 2 or 3 year deals, which pay them handsomely. So I actually think the pressure is at the most the same, probably less.
Much less.
Yeah. We'll talk about that and more. We got to get out of here for hour 1. We're leaving you a couple minutes earlier than normal because Enoch Mwamba, star Canadian middle linebacker of the Montreal Alouettes, Gord Burwell Award winner, has logged in, and he will join us live next to open up hour 2. And we'll get to your comments from Atlantic Canada. They're watching out there today, and they have questions for us. That's all coming up in hour 2. It's episode 161 of Canada's only live morning sports talk show. This is The Rod Peterson Show on Facebook Live, and listen live at rodpeterson.com.
You're watching Rod Peterson On Demand. For more of The Rod Peterson Show, visit rodpeterson.com or follow Rod Peterson on social media.